Hi, Jen. I want to start. Well, first off, I want to say I've been waiting for this moment for since forever. And I've been holding onto my excitement really because you're one of those people who I came across, in the very beginning of my journey. Like when I started my digital journey, you're one of those people who I came across. And I've been like really looking at your work, and just your presence has inspired me so much, like social media presence. And I want to thank you so much for coming into my life. And I want to mention, like, really, most people will find it silly, but for me, it's really, 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 really like, it's really close to my heart. I remember in the beginning, years, I went to your website and I saw this amazing pictures of you. And I was like, I need this kind of photo shoot. That used to be like aspiration for me. And at that point, I was like, okay, for me, those things, like, they defined success. Like a great photo shoot defined success. Great photo shoot, great pictures defined magnetism. And that's one of the reasons why, we decided on this topic for today, like who is a magnetic coach and what makes them a magnetic coach. And now I don't know whether any of that really makes someone a magnetic coach or not. But for me, it's a memory of you that I have of like me kind of meeting you for the first time digitally, that I have that kind of changed my whole life. Wouldn't be like, I know it might be cheesy, but yeah, I would still love to say that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with me. This is so cool to hear. And I think for everyone listening, it's a really powerful lesson in, I mean, there's so many layers to it. So I don't know
Yeah,
if there's one
correct.
specific lesson, but yeah, just putting
Yeah,
yourself out there, getting the photo shoot, choosing the up level, right? Like all the things, like
yeah,
putting your best foot forward and really having your work reflect who you are and how you feel on the inside.
yeah, correct. And
Yeah.
also, I remember this, like, it's kind of strange because this is the first time we're meeting like live. I
Yeah.
remember I joined one of your programs also back, I don't know, 2019 or 2020.
Mhm.
Um, but the problem, I couldn't join any live session. So it was always me like watching recorded, uh, recordings. And so it's a like special, today's special on that level also. Okay. So
Mm.
let's bring the spotlight on you now. I love to know your journey, like what brought you to doing the work that you're doing and what kind of work that you're doing. And like, yeah, what brought you here?
Yeah. So my journey with online coaching started in 2011. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I was in
Mhm.
college. I remember having this like first moment of connecting with my channel where I was writing in my notes app on my phone and I just wrote the words feed your soul. And it just didn't feel like I wrote it, but I didn't understand what that was at
Mhm.
the time. Now looking back, I'm like, ah, okay, that was the first moment. And that sort of became this driving light, that one sentiment, that one statement. And I decided to go and like pursue my acting career at the time. And that was when I first became an accidental entrepreneur and
Mhm.
stumbled into online business for the very first time. I was doing health and fitness coaching. And over the years, that evolved into then helping other health and fitness coaches with their
Mhm.
businesses, and then business coaching, and then really seeing some of the big gaps in the different communities that I was a part of as a like young person, like trying to learn the ropes of
Mhm.
online business. And again, back then we were all figuring it out. So
Yeah,
the so-called experts were also stumbling through, what
right.
the evolution of social media was, what business was. But really what was a big turning point for me was this was probably in like 2016, 2017. I was holding space for really big groups doing business coaching, business strategy. And I started to see there was this really interesting gap that I had seen in other containers too. And one of the things that I will say I do well is pattern recognition. Like I could spot the
Yeah.
patterns. It's like, okay, there's an
Mhm.
interesting pattern here. And I was seeing that there were some people in the spaces, regardless of which group I was in, some people were really struggling, and they were in these like patterns of self-doubt, and they just sort of embodied this energy of being the underdog because everybody else could see how much potential they had, everybody else could see how brilliant they were, but they didn't see it for themselves. And
Yeah.
how many pep talks you're going to give a person, like they're not, it's not sinking in. Like we can say it to them, but
Mhm.
they need to feel it for themselves. And then there would be like the person who would come in as the cheerleader in a group, but they wouldn't necessarily take the space to go and work on their own
Yeah.
stuff. They were just always like pouring into everybody else,
Mhm.
pouring. They were the awesome like community manager,
Mhm.
cheerleaders. Those you need those people in groups, right? And then
Yeah.
there was like this smaller handful of people who just would take immediate action, who just could implement immediately, and everyone else is going, "How did you do that?" And they're like, "I don't know, I
Mhm.
just followed the
Yeah.
program." They're like, "No, no, no, but what's your secret, man? Like, how'd you really do it?" Like, I'm telling you, I just followed the steps given to me. And then there was like the people who were like the lurkers who wouldn't turn on their cameras on Zoom or who wouldn't post, who would just read stuff. So, right, so I'm seeing like this really interesting spread. And, at the time in the online space, there was kind of this attitude or this belief that if someone wasn't showing up, it was fully their responsibility. And yes, we want
Mhm.
people to take personal responsibility for the things that they're creating in their lives. And I
Mhm.
think there's more nuance to that. Because when you only say, well, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, you're kind of absolving yourself as the coach or the content
Mhm.
creator, or the course creator of all responsibility of what you've
Mhm.
promised someone. You've promised them you're going to support them to get them to,
Yeah.
depending on the promise, right?
Mhm.
And
Correct.
so I really saw that there was this problem, this gap. So I became obsessed with learning about the subconscious mind and
Mhm.
got certified, and like that completely changed my life and was truly the missing piece. And after I started implementing all of the things that I had been learning and infusing them into my programs and weaving that all in, it was really crazy to see the 180. And my clients were already
Mhm.
getting really good results.
Mhm.
So it was more that they were really integrated in what they were creating, because like you can go and make a bunch of money, but if you don't feel safe with money, or if
Yeah.
you are uncomfortable with the visibility, then people would self-sabotage. So we could give people results, but some people would self-sabotage. And now once I incorporated all the subconscious pieces, that
Mhm.
is really where I started to see a huge shift in how my clients were showing up, how they were actually embodying the energy of the expansion that they were calling in.
Yeah, that's so good to hear that because I'm 100% sure that it resonates with so many people out there. I was one of those people who wanted to do everything in the most perfect way, but still wanted to hide. And when it
Mm,
come to like showing up and really sharing what I know or even like what I'm good at, I used to feel like, no, who am I to be doing this? Who am I to be doing this? Like, even if it's like perfect to the T, I would still feel that no, somebody's going to find that mistake and it would make me feel horrible. That
mm.
stopped me. And so, probably like in our conversation, you're the best person to be talking about this. Is like if we could go into the details of how people can shift from that mindset. It took me a long time. And so, and I know there are so many people out there who are still struggling with this mindset and could
Mhm.
take measures to kind of come out of it.
Yeah.
But before going into that, I would love to know like what, other than this, like what shifted? Like, was there a moment in your life where you felt that, uh, you're not good enough? And maybe you want to share some story where that kind of changed everything for you. Or, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many
Oh,
iterations
yeah.
of that. So many iterations of that. I mean, early on, back in probably the 2010s, I remember listening
Mhm.
to an audio program. This was before the days of podcasts that I had put onto my iPod Nano, and I went for a run.
Mhm.
And I remember listening to personal development, and I would listen to personal development in the car here and there, but this was the first time I had it on a run. And I remember there was something that the woman said, that confidence is a habit. And that completely shattered my brain, because my entire life I believed that you either were born with it or you weren't. And I was
Oh, yeah.
categorize like, oh, I definitely wasn't born
Mhm.
with this. Like I
Mhm.
can do some pretty cool things, but I'm doing it shaking and terrified and,
Yeah.
having like fight or flight in my body and having to run to the bathroom. Like there was like some really like I had like severe anxiety
Mm.
and like would get like almost panic attacks, especially when I was in theater and I would go and audition and stuff. So this was like really affecting my life and I would go through this emotional roller coaster and be like, oh my God, like how do people audition multiple times a week? I can barely get through one. Like I need to sleep for 3 days after. But it was because I was putting my body through such an intense experience because of all this unhealed like emotional trauma that I was
Mhm.
holding on to, all these old stories and patterns. And so I listened to this podcast and she said confidence is a habit. It's just something that you have to build. And that completely shifted the way that I thought about self-esteem and
Mhm.
showing up. And actually for the very first time I stepped into being what we call at cause, where I was like, oh, I can take personal responsibility and I can make this change. I
Mhm.
can actually take steps towards making this change. So that was a very empowering shift that was pretty early on. But yeah, there was so many times where I was hiding and not showing up fully, a lot of old stories and patterns throughout the years around not feeling good enough. I remember in
Mhm.
2017, I joined a mastermind with some pretty heavy hitters in the industry. And I was like, how did I
Yeah.
get in this room? I don't belong here. And you were talking about perfectionism. I remember it was in Laguna Beach. So I have very, very curly hair and I wanted to have like soft, straight hair with like soft
Yeah.
curls.
I remember that time.
Yes, but I have banana curls, so being by the beach, it's, like, immediate humidity, so I remember just spending forever in the bathroom that morning before the first day of the mastermind, just trying to make sure that my hair was perfect and that
Mhm.
every, like, cuticle was fully sealed and that heat had hit it so that it wouldn't
Wow.
frizz up, and I
Mhm.
got there, like and I was like, "I'm gonna get there early, I'm gonna get a good seat, all this stuff," and I showed up, and there was only 1 seat left, and it was at the table with I won't name names, it was, like,
Mhm.
some people who you like, I was like, this is a joke. This has to be a joke. There's no way I can sit at this table. I
Mhm.
can't add anything to so we would do like little round table hot
Yeah.
seats. I was like, I can add no value to this table. You've got to be freaking kidding me. And I was scanning the room. It felt like, one of those moments in a movie where time stands
Mhm.
still and like
Yeah.
everything slows down. You're like, no, please let this not be true. But I was terrified to sit at that table because
Mhm.
I was in such a place of, you know, what do I have to add? And also at that time, I had just split up with a business partner. We had a
Mhm.
very lucrative business. And basically, the person who was running the mastermind, I told them on our like intake call, I was like, look, yes, I had this really big business and this is like rug pulled out from under me. The business no longer exists. So I'm rebuilding. And so
Mm.
like, okay, but he had had a similar experience and was like, no, like, I think you should
Yeah.
still be in the
Was
group.
it the health with fitness business, or was it something else?
Say again.
Was it the health fitness business or something else?
No, so it was right after I transitioned out of health and fitness. I was
Uh-huh.
business coaching people in the health and fitness space, helping them with the
Mhm.
technical things behind the scenes, building funnels. And then I partnered with someone and we ran a group program for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. And
Mhm.
it did very, very well right out the gate. And
Mhm.
yeah, and then that person decided they no longer wanted to be a coach and we canceled mid launch,
Oh my
which
god.
was
That's
brutal.
terrible.
Brutal, it was terrible. I was like I had to go through a lot of healing after that, of just
Mhm.
realizing what that dynamic actually was, how it
Mhm.
was very unsafe, unhealthy, and yeah, how it just things kept
Mhm.
getting a little bit more, uh, distorted the longer I was in it. So when I left that dynamic,
Mhm.
I had a lot of personal healing to do.
Yeah. That kind of makes me think of, like, what should people do, or how should they come out of this pattern or window when they experience failed launches?
Mm. Well, that one was
Mhm.
a very successful launch. We had already secured $200,000 and we
Mhm.
refunded $100,000 because it was 200,000 that would have been if, with payment plans.
Mhm.
So that one's kind of a unique one. I've had other experiences where launches didn't go to plan, and
Mhm.
in terms of like sitting with a launch, I think number one is always feel your feelings. Your feelings are
Mhm.
valid, and you can have that disappointment. You can have that
Yeah.
sadness. There's a lot in the online space of like, okay, just look at your data, look at your numbers, and
Yeah.
like pick yourself up and wipe yourself off
Mhm.
and do it again. It's like, yes, but there's also that first step of
Yeah.
real feelings. And I think, in the early days of personal development world and the online business world, it was very like masculine, very
Right.
male led. And through that lens,
Mhm.
it often ignored some of the emotional and energetic components of why a launch might not do well. And for me,
Yeah.
I've watched so many people have very successful launches and launches that performed terribly, like not what they
Mhm.
wanted at all. And it really, I think in my work as a coach, especially talking about being a magnetic coach, we cannot ignore the energetic and emotional
Yeah.
components of what's happening in a
Mhm.
launch and what's happening within us. And if you want your launches to perform even more, then that
Mhm.
really is that foundational
Yeah.
piece.
Okay. Makes sense. Makes total
Yeah.
sense because, and I've observed that for myself. Like I experienced a number of failed launches, but then when I started, like you said, feeling it and understanding, okay, what's going on.
Mhm.
It doesn't seem like numbers are all the things that are making are behind the scenes. It's so much more. It's the energetics. It's really the energy with which I'm showing up
Mhm.
and things that I'm believing. And when that started to happen, when I started working on my own limiting beliefs, my own trauma, I started healing through my, childhood experiences. That's when my energy shifted and the whole game shifted for me as well. Let's talk about energetics now. Like, what do you mean by when you say it's about the energetics? So, what do you mean by that?
What I mean by energetics is your emotional state. So any emotion that we are in has a certain frequency to it. So I don't like to call emotions like negative or positive, but they are low vibrational or high vibrational
Mhm.
frequencies that are within us. And when we have an emotion, and just because something is a low vibrational frequency doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's wrong. We are here as human beings,
Yeah,
and we are given all of this range of emotional capacity
very true.
because they serve a purpose. So if we are, going through our day and we have an experience and we feel angry and we move through it, and that's fine. But when we have sort of these bigger emotional experiences where maybe we're a young child and we experience trauma,
Mhm.
our brains are not cognitively developed enough to
Mhm.
process that emotion. And sometimes we're in environments where we have more severe things that are happening, where it truly is overwhelming to the body. And essentially, on an energetic level, what happens is those energies get stored in the body, because I think
Mhm.
in a lot of like Western psychology, it's very much focused on the mind. But in a lot of the work that
Mm,
I do and a lot of what I've studied, even the shamanic traditions, there's an energetic component to these things. And I do a lot of energy clearing work, things that activated for
yeah.
me a couple of years ago. And yeah, there's things within our energetic fields that extend outside our physical
Mhm.
body, as well as things in our bodies and in our organs that hold memory.
Yeah.
And I've
100%.
experienced this myself, and I've watched it happen
Yeah.
time and time again with, friends and clients and colleagues. So when we are walking around with all of this unhealed energetic
Mhm.
baggage, so we're holding in our womb that time that somebody crossed a boundary with us, and it made us
Yeah.
unsafe. In the liver, you're holding resentment for the time that, X, Y, and Z, right? So we have all these different things that we're holding, and then we go to show up and say, I want to create an online business. Having an online business and showing up in launches is one of the best ways to uncover where you're still holding energy that's not.
I 100% agree. This is going to be the bold statement of this episode, takeaway of this episode.
Yes. If you want to heal your ish, like go do a launch and you'll see
Yeah.
where stuff is.
Everything's will come up. Everything's, you'll see all your trauma in one
Yes.
go. They
Like that
also,
one time that kid was mean to you at recess. Oh, that's
yeah.
that's in my left toe. Okay, like why is my toe hurting? So is
Also like the negative self-talk.
yes.
And, in our regular lives, it all goes unnoticed. But during a launch, or even if you're trying to sell something on Evergreen, or maybe trying to do a soft launch, all those that's the beautiful opportunity for you to kind of gauge into the negative self-talk and your limiting beliefs. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that for me, like you said, go to a launch and see what all the stuff comes out.
Yep. And it really shows us where our energetic capacity is, like what we
Mhm.
are actually able to hold. And when I say hold, I mean also what we're able to receive. Because if we
Mhm.
feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, nobody likes
Mhm.
me, or things like it's not safe to be around women. Maybe
Mm,
somebody
yeah.
got bullied by a bunch of girls when they were little, so they just repel wanting to work with women, and yet they're trying to build a community online that's primarily focused on helping women, achieve
Yeah.
financial success. And then they're like, why isn't
Mhm.
this working? And it's like, well, there's something energetically and emotionally that needs to
Mhm.
be explored in order to be able to transmute that energy. And then once you
Yeah.
do, your capacity expands, your capacity
Mhm.
expands. And that is really how we achieve those next levels of abundance.
Yeah. And do you think that's what makes a magnetic coach? Like
Yeah. I mean, I
working
think
on your energetics.
absolutely. I mean, it's interesting too. Like, there's some people who uh, come into the space and they maybe didn't have a lot of trauma growing up or they didn't
Yeah.
have certain stories. And those are the people who now looking back, it's like, oh, the ones who could just implement and they just took off. It's like, oh yeah, they were already in a very healed state, a very
Mhm.
clean, energetic state where they were, had really positive relationships, were able to receive, were able to show up for people.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to have the different things that they go through
Yeah.
in life, like different
Right.
karmic lessons, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the people who are truly magnetic are oftentimes ones who have been through some really difficult challenges and they've transmuted it. And it's actually their
Yeah.
story of transmutation, of being able to take something that was so terrible and so rough and so brutal and be able to come out the other side and say that was my greatest lesson
Mhm.
and now I want to teach you about it. Oftentimes those
Mhm.
are the people who become the
Yeah.
most magnetic coaches because everybody goes through stuff and we want to learn from people who have been through something
Yeah.
and they
Correct.
can teach us. Yeah.
And it also makes you, like you said, that you're not born with confidence.
Mhm.
It's a skill set that you can build over time. And just clearing your aura, gives you so much confidence.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, I wouldn't have said it anywhere else, but because you're here today and it's a milestone for me, I wouldn't have had the confidence to even like message you on like up to 4 years ago.
Mm.
And I had it now and it just happened naturally. And so I didn't have to build that confidence. It happened naturally. I was like, reach out. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I wanted to know what's your take on that? Like when you clear your energy, does confidence come naturally, or like do you still have to do something to achieve your goals?
Hmm. It's a really good question. You're saying, do you still have to do something to achieve your goals? I would say yes. There's still, I
Hmm.
guess the something is kind of subjective. I
Yeah,
think, when we are trying to create something, especially when we get to these levels where we're creating something that's never been created before,
yeah,
there's a lot of different things at play, right? There is sometimes like the energetics of the surrender and the manifestation and the alignment with that. And then there's also the strategy and the steps. And
yeah,
when I teach like course design and program design, I really break down any transformation, anything where you're taking
mhm,
someone from point A to point B or where you are right now and where you want to go
yeah,
to. There's always
mhm,
going to be a conscious level of things and then a subconscious level. So the conscious level of criteria are all the tangible things that you're consciously
mhm,
aware of. So the steps, the okay, I'm going to hire this person, I'm going to join this program, do these morning routines, and then there's all the subconscious work that needs to be done in order to get to that like point B of where you want to get to, and that's where a lot of people uh, early on, what I realized a lot of people weren't doing that
yeah,
stuff where it's all
mhm,
the belief work. So looking at your values, looking at your beliefs, looking at your
mhm,
identities, looking at your energetics, your emotional states. A lot of people don't realize where where their like emotional set point is.
yeah,
Everyone listening probably has an uncle or a family member who's just like the curmudgeon. They're really grouchy, grumpy person. And they're like,
mhm,
yeah, that's just his personality. And it's like, no, 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 that's not somebody's personality. That's
yeah,
a pattern, right? That's
it's
something
a
that
pattern,
they've
correct.
done multiple times over and over. They're
Mhm,
existing in this emotional state. over
Yeah.
time, and then it just becomes who they are. But it's not
Mhm.
actually who they are. It's just how they behave and how they show up and where they energetically live.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at, okay, if you're working with a client who's in that place, how and they want to feel joy and gratitude and abundance, well, how
Mhm.
do you get them there? Well, we also need to look like, well, what are their beliefs? What are the stories, like you
Mhm.
were saying? What are the patterns? What are the things that
Yeah.
are happening in their brains all day long? Do they have chronic pains in their bodies that no doctors can make sense of because energy is
Mhm.
stuck in the body? And a lot of times when we are unintegrated in an emotion, for example,
Mhm.
people will say, I had a client that said, well, I'm a happy person. I'm not an angry person. And I said, oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
So if
Yeah.
you're not an angry person, you're a happy person, how do you experience anger?
Yeah.
And
What
she was like,
they
"What?" Like, short circuiting because you're like, "How do you?" Yeah, if that's your story
Mhm.
that you're telling yourself, then there's a good likelihood that you're not allowing a full expression of
Mhm.
healthy anger to move through you. So,
Yeah.
looking at those types of patterns, looking at values,
Mhm.
like what is actually important to you, and are you living in alignment with what is
Mhm.
most important? Is family your number one most important value, but your
Mhm.
whole life you've been putting money and career and your
Yeah.
boss's needs
Other
over.
people's other
Yeah.
people's wish. Yeah.
Mhm. And then the identity
Mhm.
work, like, if you truly
Yeah.
believe that you suck and you're no good and nobody likes you, it's gonna be really hard to build a business that
Yeah.
has community and has people giving you, like,
Mhm.
raving testimonials, because there's gonna be that cognitive dissonance where we have 2, like,
Mhm.
conflicting
Yeah.
beliefs within us, right? And so people don't when they don't understand what those patterns are, I think it makes it a lot more difficult to kind of synthesize what's happening, and people
Yeah.
kind of just take a step back and go, I don't know what's happening. This is too
Mhm.
much. And they get overwhelmed, which is understandable because when you don't understand what's happening within you, it can be overwhelming.
Can be, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It brings me to a question. Is there a way to identify that a pattern is like not working for me? And that really it's a pattern. It's not like, yeah, because for many people who are listening and in general, sometimes it's difficult to catch that it's a pattern that I need to change. So, is there a
Mhm.
way we can identify that this is something that's holding me back and this is what I need to change for better impact and better wealth and confidence?
Yeah, this is a really good question because you're right. Sometimes people are in patterns. You might see
Yeah.
it's easier to see when it's outside of you. When it's your stuff,
Right.
sometimes it's
Mhm.
harder to spot. But when it's someone else, you're like, wow, how do they not realize that? How do they not
Yeah.
see that? Gosh, they're just in this loop, or they're in this like unhealthy relationship,
Mhm.
or they're abusing their body, or whatever it is. So I think with any kind of pattern, the person has to be ready and willing to look at it. So
Yeah.
there's one of the
That's
things,
step one.
yeah, like, so there is that piece of like, you can lead a horse
Mhm.
to water. Like, people do interventions and things like that, but until the person is truly ready to make a change and they're truly done, like truly done with how they've been
Yeah.
living, and they're ready to walk through that
Mhm.
doorway and choose something new, we can't choose that for someone else.
Yeah.
So I
Correct.
think that's the first piece of, we can support someone, we can, highlight certain things, if it's
Mhm.
a safe person to talk to about things that are happening. I know sometimes people try to address certain patterns with abusive
Mhm.
parents or partners or things like that, and things don't always go super well. If you're in a
Yeah.
dynamic with a narcissist or somebody who's
Mhm.
just, takes every piece of feedback as a personal attack and they get
Yeah.
defensive, but if there's pieces, within yourself where you're saying, okay, I've been living my life and I'm not experiencing the joy and abundance and fulfillment that I actually want, there's
Mhm.
probably some patterns and some things that are
Yeah.
happening within you that are not aligning with that desire. And anytime we go and sit down and set a goal, that's another place where we can look at,
Yeah.
okay, well, who do I need? It's not just like, what do I need to do to get there? Because that's where most people stop. That's sort of like the conscious mind
Mhm.
question. What do I need to do to get there? But the subconscious piece is, who do I need to become? And what does that goal demand of me? What does that
Mhm.
require of me? And am I willing to make those sacrifices? Am I willing, am I able to step into that awareness and acknowledge that there's going to be a cost? And anytime someone sets a goal, I say, It's not just, I'm not saying a financial cost. I'm talking
Yeah.
about, like, are you willing to let go of your old stories? Are you willing to adopt new habits and
Yeah.
behaviors? Are you willing to stop old habits and behaviors that are not in alignment with that new goal? Right? So there's a whole list of things that can
Yeah.
kind of get untethered just from that one question.
And does this also mean like questioning your behavior? Like,
Mhm.
is my behavior correct or aligned with what I truly want in my life?
Mhm.
So like you said that you're here, but you want to be somewhere else. And so like tapping into that identity. And then you said that step one is kind of be willing to like say no to what you don't want and like be done with it. And you
Mhm.
want to, like really change your life. The step two means questioning your behavior or
Yeah.
like, yeah, how would you put it?
Yeah, so I think, thank you for giving that a clear step too. When we look at, like, how we get to a certain result, if we walk it backwards, whatever that goal or that desire is, we go, okay, or even some result that we don't like.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I put on 30 pounds. I don't like that. Okay, well, how did we get there? Let's walk it back. Well, the first thing we look at is behavior. What are the
Mhm.
things that we were doing or not doing that got us there? And then if we take one step back beyond before behavior, we want to
Mhm.
look at our emotional states.
Oh, great.
And from our emotional states, those are influenced by our thoughts, and also from our physiology. So, how are we carrying ourselves? What's happening physically in our bodies? And if we walk the physical state one back, that's when we actually, and the thoughts that we have one step back, we can look at what are our filters. So, what are our beliefs, our values, our identities, our mood when we made certain decisions. So, we can
Mhm.
kind of look at all of these different things that are actually the filters of our reality. Because
Yeah.
at any point in time, we're being given so much information, so much input,
Mhm.
and there's things that we're deleting, distorting, and generalizing. So, there are a couple of different numbers that get thrown out, but it's the contrast is what's more important. So the idea is that we are taking in 2.3 million bits per second of information, but we are only actually able to consciously filter 126 bits per second.
Wow.
So huge difference. And so our subconscious mind is absorbing and taking in everything, but we're only
Mhm.
consciously able to absorb a limited amount. And so, how do we choose what 126 bits of information to focus on? It's through our filters, through our values, our
Yeah.
identities, our mood, our location, all these different things. So, that's what's filtering it down. So, when we can actually walk it all the way backwards to the root cause of, okay, well, how are we filtering the world? That is going to give us a lot of insight, as opposed to where most people stop, which is only looking at and working on behavior, but that's
Yeah.
only the conscious level of what we can measure, what we saw that we did, or what we remember happening.
So let's take this cycle of whatever you want to call it
Yeah.
to a person who wants to become a magnetic coach
Mhm.
or magnetic course creator, magnetic entrepreneur, whatever identity they want to define for themselves. Um, could you give us an example of how that would look like for a person who feels they're not magnetic?
Mm.
And just an example, like anything that's coming up for you, and how the journey would look like for this person from like I'm not magnetic to
Mm.
okay, I'm getting where I want to be.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody was saying that they didn't feel like a magnetic coach, but they wanted to become a magnetic
Hmm.
coach, as you know, I run a coaching certification, so this is
Yeah.
very similar to the journey that a lot of them are going on, right? They come in and they're going, "Well, I'm already working with clients, and I really want to take
Mhm.
my clients deeper. I want to do that with
Yeah.
safety and integrity, but I don't know how." So
Mhm.
when people say things like that, I go, "Okay, there's like some belief work, some identity work, but also like skill level work where they just are kind of
Mhm.
getting to a certain point in the dynamic and not really knowing what to do next." And then there's other people who are like, "I'm so scared to join a certification because I don't think I can be a coach," and they haven't even started yet. And so for
Yeah.
them, there's a lot more, oftentimes, emotional stuff that's coming up around
Mhm.
just, uh, fear and doubt and
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. And then there's some people who already have very, very successful businesses with big teams, but they're also seeing that, as a CEO and as a leader, and to just, especially with the introduction of all this stuff with AI, I feel like a lot of courses right now are
Yeah.
getting like everybody's got a course and AI can build you a course in 5 minutes, but how do you take it to the next level? Like, how
True.
do you deliver and in a way that's human and
Yeah.
real,
Correct.
deep? So it's like that's really where this I think comes into for a lot of people who are kind of asking these questions. So if we're looking at like what does it look like to become a magnetic coach, I think for everybody they might have a different what's called an internal representation, so different picture in their head when we say the word magnetic coach. So as
Yeah.
you're thinking about that picture in your head of maybe somebody you follow or like who you
Hmm.
consider to be a magnetic coach,
Hmm.
there might be some things that you look at in terms of their behavior. And there might be some
Hmm.
things that you see on social media that they're doing every day. But there's probably also some things that you're not seeing. But you can also ask yourself, what are the things that I would need to do every day in order to be a what are the what are the what is the daily structure? What are the choices? And then we can go back further and say, okay, well, if the behaviors maybe are like waking up at a certain time and moving your body, even just for 10 minutes, or journaling for 10 minutes. Those are some common ones. So that
Yeah.
might be something that you choose to do if it feels right for you. If it doesn't feel right for you, then maybe don't do it. I know a lot of the uh,
Hmm.
old school mentality around having a very early morning and a very structured day that
5 a.m. club.
yeah, the 5 a.m. club. I'm like, that's just not ever going to be for me. Like, it's just not for me. And that's okay.
Mine
I've
for
had
me.
to like, find my way through that because I was told that is the only way to be successful. And, uh, it just doesn't fit for me. It just doesn't energetically align. So I think there is some trial and error that sometimes goes into this process of discovery of what's actually right for you. Because someone else is going to give you their whole system and strategy, and it works for them, for their unique life, for their unique blueprint,
Hmm.
for their unique needs. So it's about figuring out what feels right for you. And
Yeah.
then really starting to look at your emotional states. So if you're saying that you want to call in massive abundance, but you live in a chronic state of worry or anxiety or self-doubt, then, those are some things like, okay, what is, like Tony Robbins says, like, what is your emotional home?
Oh yeah.
What if you were to go around and ask all of your friends and family if they were truly to be honest with you, and you were to say, what is the one energy, like emotional state that I live in, what would it be? That is a confronting question to ask, but it'll give you a ton of insight. And again, people are also filtering you through their filters.
Hmm.
So it might not be completely accurate, right? It's their deletions,
That
distortions, and generalizations.
disclaimer.
Right, like, it doesn't mean that's who you are, right? That's the whole point of this, is that it's not who you are, it's just a pattern. So, like, when I was younger, especially in the early days of online business, I lived in those patterns of uncertainty and fear, and I spent most of my day, like, worrying, "Is this gonna work? Is this not gonna work? Is this gonna work? Is it not gonna work?" And then as I started doing more healing work and clearing different things, then the question became, how do I make this better? How do I make this better? How do I make this better? Which sounds like it should be a better question, but the energetic state from which I was asking that question was still doubt and uncertainty
Yeah.
because
Right.
it still wasn't enough. So noticing the questions that you ask yourself is really, really powerful as well. When we're, so that's kind of connected back into the thoughts
Yeah.
that we think and the questions we ask.
It's I'm literally losing track of the conversation. I'll tell you why. Because the things that you're saying kind of like making me think
Yeah.
towards those things. And I'm like, okay, but I need to come back to where I am in
Yeah.
the conversation.
You're like,
You
what are
know,
the questions I ask
yeah, what
myself?
was the question? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm like, okay, am I like, did I ask the right question?
Yeah. Well, honestly, that's a powerful one too. I had a
Hmm.
client once, we were on a coaching call and she was like, can't grow my business and I really want to like become this like magnetic coach. And what do I
Hmm.
do? And I just feel so stuck in my life. And she was working all day long babysitting and it was like super
Yeah.
exhausting. It was like 3 kids or something like that.
Hmm.
And so she was working all day and needed the money to fund her business but didn't have time to do it. So she was in this loop of I need more time, but I need more money, but I need more time, but I
Yeah.
need more money. And she said, I'm just there doing the babysitting and every day I just think to myself, what are you doing with your life? What am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my life? And then she just kind of continued talking and ranting and I went, hold on, can we pause there for a second? I said, let's rewind the tape. What's the question
Yeah.
you ask yourself? And she's like, oh, what? Like, people are in their process, they're just flowing, they don't always
Yeah.
realize what they say. So what's the question? And she's like, oh, what am I doing with my life? And I said, yeah, how often are you asking yourself that? And she was like, oh my God, all day, every day. And I said, what
Yeah.
emotional state are you in when you ask that? And she was like, oh my God, total depression and disempowerment and like anger and frustration. And I said, when you ask yourself that on a subconscious level, you're not consciously aware you're asking yourself that or saying that question. How are you responding?
Yeah.
And it took her a moment. She had to like actually think about it. She said, well, when I say, what are you doing with your life? Nothing. You're a failure. You're a loser. Right. So she just became
Mm.
like super aware that this was just like a broken record playing in the back of her mind all day long, every day. And her trigger point was going into that job that she didn't like, but she wasn't aware of that. And as soon as she shifted that, it was like a huge transformation for her, huge pivotal moment, because she decided to actually start listening to personal development when she was there. And, you know, and she would catch that question and she'd change it and she'd ask a different question. So part of the early days of, you know, stepping into becoming your most magnetic self, really being in that early healing stage. I don't know if you can relate to this or experience this as well. But I'm like, I just felt like I was playing whack-a-mole in the early days of healing, where it was like you'd catch that question, you'd catch that old thought,
Yeah.
no, no, cancel, clear, delete.
There's
And
an interesting thing that I do, and that has like worked really well for me is I don't know if I'm sure you're aware of it, but like asking yourself, what do I want? And then like, okay, what are all the reasons why I don't have it right now in my life?
mm,
And that reveals so much that that doesn't even like every day. I don't see it in everyday life. But the moment I ask myself that question, so much is revealed. And I like to call it like blind spots.
mhm,
And then that's where I start questioning, okay, is this what I believe about myself? And I'm saying I want it, but look at it. I myself don't believe that I can get it.
mm,
And then kind of working um, on those beliefs or patterns or whatever. That worked really well for me.
wow.
And it kind of be like different for everybody, but listening to you, I got this thought. Let me share what works for me as well.
Oh yeah. No, I love that. That's super powerful. Yeah, we gotta like, you know, as we're going through their like own healing journeys, because that's really what all this is, right? Like you're like, oh,
Mhm.
I want to be, especially being a coach, someone wants to be a magnetic coach. It's about, you know, doing work that's based in service, that's holding
Yeah.
space for others, that's supporting others. And people like, I want to be that version. It's like it starts with you. It starts with you healing and clearing and doing
Yeah.
your own work so that you can hold less triggered, like 'cause people get triggered by their clients. It's like, well, if you're getting triggered by your clients, there's something there for you to heal. So the more that you're able to heal, the more you're able to process things in your own life, it's going to make it easier to hold a variety of different experiences for others.
Yeah.
That's
And
what I'm
that's what makes you magnetic. It's not uh like a magic wand or something.
yeah.
It's not a photo shoot.
Not a photo shoot. It's not $1 million like money.
Yeah, it's not a,
Like,
yeah.
you know, doesn't solve.
Totally. Right.
Yeah.
So do you think once we change our energetics or everything that we discussed up until now, all of that kind of impacts the amount of impact that we create in the world and the amount of wealth that we can generate or we can receive. And yes, we talk a lot about confidence as well. Like, just wanted to like also touch upon wealth and impact.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think I call it like clean energy. When you come in into
Mm.
a space and you just have really grounded, really clean energy where you're not holding on to all the energetic baggage and maybe you're just like you're eating really clean, you're taking care of your body, you're
I love the word
prioritizing
clean
yourself.
energy.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like, you know, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, when all of those things are like clean, like people can feel that. People go, "Wow, you have really grounded energy. Wow, you're really present." And they don't understand like how you did that. They're like, how are you so present? How is it that when I'm with you, I feel so held by you and I feel like you're really listening to me? And there is aspects of that, you know, from having a certification, that is a skill that you develop, knowing what to watch for, knowing how to respond, what language to use. But really the biggest piece is the energetics of really knowing how to hold that space, and it truly starts with being able to have that stillness within yourself, and that comes from doing all the clearing and realigning work. for your own patterns.
So can anybody be a magnetic person?
Say
Like,
again?
is it open to, can anybody be a magnetic person?
Oh my god, yes. I mean, all of this healing stuff is truly a process of remembering who you actually are. Because all the stuff that we're talking about
So
with, like, shifting these beliefs and these identities, that's all the crap that you picked up along the way. That was other people's unhealed projections and unhealed stories, and also, like, society and,
yeah,
all the exposures that we have, especially when we're younger. And this process of, like, becoming a magnetic coach or just becoming the best version of you, the most happy and fulfilled version of you, it's truly about dropping all the stuff that isn't even yours and remembering who you actually are and remembering your power and claiming your power. That's what it's about.
that's so strong. I wonder, like, for me, the biggest thing, uh, like, biggest shift happened in my life was when I accepted my flaws
Mm,
and when I accepted myself. Like, okay, and I'm still on this journey. New things reveal themselves.
yeah.
Like, really, when I started, like, accept, okay, this is me, and I still get to be here, I still get to show up just the
Mhm.
way I am. And like, I'm enough just the way I am. That's when things started to really shifting for me. So I wanted to ask you, like, what was this one thing that kind of made the difference for you? And I'm sure that you've done a ton of healing work, but one thing that kind of like, oh, this is the most life-changing thing for me.
I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many. Well, and before I answer that, I would love to just add as well to what we were previously talking about.
Mm-hmm.
To be a magnetic coach doesn't mean that you're completely healed. That's
Okay.
not the criteria. So I just want to say that too, because sometimes people go,
Yeah.
well, I have to wait till I'm fully healed and I'm fully cleared and I've let go of all of the things and I have no limiting beliefs left and before I can show up. And that could not be further from the truth.
Yeah.
Could not be further from the truth. Like whoever you are right now, however you're showing up, like it's all a process, it's all an unfolding. Every single time you clear something else, you're gonna meet a new version of yourself, a new iteration of yourself. And that is part of the human experience. That's just what
Yeah.
you're here to do. And that is going to be healing for other people in and of itself. And there was a friend, she had written this book and she had been writing it for 3 years, and she didn't like that the way that her the earlier stuff she wrote, she was like, oh, this doesn't sound like me anymore. And her editor was like, but it might be exactly what someone else needs. Like that might be the medicine that someone else is going through something and you were in it, and the way that you spoke to it and the way that you wrote it is they need the 3 year back version of you, not the version of you now.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, okay. So she gets to, like, have this whole, like, extended process. Okay, so I just want to say that in terms of, being in a place
What's the
where
name of the book again?
her book, I don't think she
Name of the
published it
person? Sorry.
yet. Celine, but she didn't publish the book yet.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not out yet. Um, and sorry, can you repeat your question that you had?
Oh my God, I have to remind a bit. I was like, what's the one thing that for me when I accepted myself, like when I accepted myself. Give me a second.
Yeah.
You keep going. I just have to plug my charger in. So what was it for you?
I would say one of the biggest shifts for me was actually when I started working with plant medicine. When I started working with ayahuasca and mushrooms, that has profoundly changed my life and has been a catalyst for so much spiritual awakening, such a deeper lens of awareness in
Yeah.
what it actually looks like to heal, and certainly from the energetic lens, what that feels like. Back in early 2020, March 2020, I had an experience where my energy gifts awakened, where I can literally sense, and I've always been able to feel other people's energies, but I actually understood how to move it and how to
Yeah.
help people transmute it. So that was a huge breakthrough. And a couple months before that was the first time I sat with ayahuasca, and I cleared so much from my body. That was so unbelievably profound. And that truly,
Yeah.
like, set up the next experience where I was like had these
Yeah.
awakenings, and like every experience has just unfolded more and more and more over the years. And yeah, that was truly a huge turning point for me in my life.
Do you want to maybe talk a little bit more about that? Because I've done mushrooms, and one thing that shifted for me after that experience was that I became emotionally uh, vulnerable. Like I
Mm.
almost instantly got this ability to express my emotions, whatever emotion was that, even if it was anger. Everything, every stuck emotion came onto the surface
Wow.
easily. So that happened for me. I I didn't go for ayahuasca. Like I would love to know, like what happened. What was your experience?
Yeah, so there's so many layers. So
Yeah.
they're both can be like similar medicines in some ways. The mushrooms are definitely a bit more playful, and there's many different types of
Mm,
mushrooms and different types of ayahuasca. But with the mushrooms, they're a little bit more playful, a little bit more silly. With ayahuasca, the more of the focus is around purging and the purgative qualities.
mm,
So
okay.
when you're working with that medicine, you know, you're seeing people run to the bathroom or purge by throwing up.
Mm,
So you're releasing energy that way. And whatever sort of, at least the way I experience it and the way others have experienced it, when you're with the medicine and you're feeling, this was more so early on, especially when I had a lot more stuff to clear.
yeah.
You know, you just sort of like all of a sudden you're feeling like this physical density and you're like, oh, everything
Mm,
hurts. This sucks. Oh my God, why is this so miserable? You're just kind of like in your suffering
mm-hmm,
and you start getting clarity, right? Maybe some people get more body experiences, some people get more pictures, some people will hear things. I get everything. I'm like feeling
mm-hmm,
everything within myself and everything that's in the room. I'm very, very open, very sensitive. And yeah, for me, I remember that first experience. We were in Costa Rica, and we sat for 4 nights in a row, which is a ton of medicine to do in a very short
wow.
amount of time. A
Yeah.
lot of ceremonies back to back to back.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's not something I really do anymore, but I will say, like, that was kind of what I think I needed for that first experience
Mm,
because it just, you know, by the third ceremony, I was so freaking fatigued, so exhausted. So
mm,
all the resistance, all the holding,
yeah.
like I had nothing, no strength left to like resist. So I just had to surrender to the process. And that third night, I had a huge, huge breakthrough, clearing sexual trauma from my womb, clearing self-hatred. I mean, my bucket was full of puke. It was filled to the brim. And,
Mm,
you know, a lot of times when we talk about like, you know, purging with ayahuasca, people are like, oh, I don't want to throw up. It's not like throwing up normally.
yeah.
It is literally an energetic purge. So I
Mm,
could feel this like demonic energy in my womb and the medicine, I could feel it like compressing around that
yeah.
energy in my body and quite literally snaking it up my body through my esophagus and
Yeah.
out of my mouth. So when you're purging, you're actually releasing the
True.
energetics
Yeah.
of what it is. And so as I started working with the medicine and some amazing shamans and facilitators, that really was a huge turning point for me because actually that night when I purged up this whole thing around like sexual trauma, which I had never really mentally categorized as a sexual trauma. I
Mm,
was like, oh, that's not what happened, you know? But
right.
my body categorized it that way,
Yeah.
and I had no idea.
So,
And I would like so you can almost speak with the medicine, right? Some people can, and so I was like, "What was that? Like, I don't understand." And I literally looked in my bucket, and somebody was like, "When you work with it, like, ask your bucket, 'What are you?'" So I'm looking in the bucket, and I said, "What are you?" And I could just see that it like this whatever purged up became a demon face, right? So then I was like, "What the fuck? Like, what is this?" And it was like from like my teen years, like somebody who crossed boundaries with me, and I moved this out of my body and I had this huge release. I was wailing, crying, seeing how I wasn't really held by anyone in my life. I had no one to go to. It was a very confusing experience. I didn't really understand what was happening. And yeah, I had this whole clearing around that. And then I was holding myself. I felt the medicine holding me. So I like had this huge experience of like being mothered through that. And yeah, it was really, really fascinating to understand and feel how the energetics live in the body. And what the message that I got from ayahuasca was that I could have done 40 years of therapy and I would not have touched
it
that
wouldn't
because
have worked. Yeah.
it
So
was
true.
so like unconscious at such a level. And that I was like, but I don't understand. Like I thought I had processed like that relationship, that experience. And she said, you healed it in your neurology, but you didn't clear it from your body. And
Mhm.
I was like,
Yeah.
holy shit. Like I didn't understand that back then. Like I had come from a like Western psychology background, loved all the like mental processes, and I still do, and I teach them, and they're fascinating and they're so helpful and they're so powerful. And I truly believe that many of those things and understanding those tools and modalities really prepared me
Mhm.
for my body to clear those things. Because like I said, I was like, I don't understand what is this? Like
It's
I didn't have
trauma.
any like emotional attachment to it
Mm.
because or like mental attachment to it because I was like, I already healed that. I don't get it. Why is that even still here? But it was like I didn't clear it from my body. I didn't release it. So yeah, that was a huge breakthrough. And then after that happened, then I worked with other medicine and like had this huge awakening of energy gifts and sort of very synchronistically ended up working with someone. I didn't even know that my energy gifts would work off of like not working with medicine and really help somebody heal this and clear this huge sexual trauma from their life and from their body and like their first partner orgasm that they had ever had, even though they were married with two kids. And it was like this huge thing. And I was like, oh my God, this thing is like really real. Like this is insane. So that was a lot for me to process and integrate. Literally March of 2020, that was right when the world shut down, like the next day. Like after I had all these big experiences.
I know, I hear you, and I know that there's so much that we have to like work on. And going back to what you said before, that it's not like healing is a phase and it's over and we are clear. It's a life journey. It
Mhm.
keeps happening. Stuff keeps coming up. One thing that helped me through my medicine experience was when I started seeing these demon faces. I was like, what's coming up is clearing. And when I was kind of resisting what was going on, it started controlling me and overpowering me.
Mm.
But I had to, in order to let go, I started saying that what's coming up is clearing. And almost instantly, it would just disappear. And I knew something from my body went away, like something cleared. That
Mhm.
helped me. But like, I'm still waiting for the time where, like, I'm still kind of um not sure whether I'm gonna do it again or if, when. I don't know. I'm not putting any
Yeah.
thoughts. But do you think everybody needs a plant medicine experience to kind of step into their magnetic self or higher self? Or um, like some people say, this is a fast track to tapping into a different identity?
Mhm.
What do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think plant medicine is necessarily meant for everyone. I
Yeah.
truly believe, especially with ayahuasca, like she calls you. She calls you. Like you will have dreams with her. You will just be thinking about it constantly. She truly calls you to that space. So, in those communities, there might be times where somebody like forces a significant other to come with them, and then that person has like a weird experience or not the experience they wanted because they weren't ready for that or it wasn't the medicine for them. So I think when we're doing medicine work, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned just in terms of like you know other people maybe being interested about it, it's like you just embody the medicine. Like you're working with the
Yeah.
medicine, you've ingested the medicine. The medicine is at such a high vibrational frequency
Mhm.
that the more you work with it or the ways in which you work with it or the way you're connecting with it, even when you're not consuming
Mm,
in ceremonial space, like you
yeah.
literally become the medicine. You become allied with these spirits, with the mushrooms, with ayahuasca, with whatever medicines you're working with, and they become your allies. And so when you're, especially if you're doing more spiritual work, when you're in those spaces and you're supporting others, it's yeah, it's truly like you are just able to hold the light. You're able to hold like
Yeah.
pure love consciousness and people can feel that. And some people will say to you like, "Whoa, what have you been doing? Like your energy is so different. Like, wow, you just seem so like I don't know, like just being
Uh,
around you like I feel." And it's like, "Yeah." And like some people will ask and some people want to know and they're interested and want to be part of it. And I
mm,
don't think it's necessary for everyone to sit with those medicines. It's like if you're the person that's going to sit with those medicines and that's part of your path, then you're able to like bring back what you've learned and what you've experienced and use those in your teachings and share those things with the world. So there's so many ways we can we can work with these
uh,
medicines
I'm,
on our
I'm
path.
glad we touched upon that because, I don't want listeners to well, I'm not the one deciding for them, they're the ones deciding for them. Like, still, I don't want to give that message that this is the way,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so, kind of wrapping up and going back to what we were talking about, like, if you were to like summarize everything and want to give your biggest takeaways, what would that, like, what would those 3 points be? And then we'll go back to, not go back to, but then we'll touch upon a little bit upon your program because I'm curious about it. Your certification.
So you're saying 3 points from this whole conversation?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
Or to put it simply, like, what are the 3 things that somebody can do today in order to raise their magnetism?
Ooh, 3 things you can do today to raise your magnetism. Ask your body, what do you need?
Yeah.
Listen to your body and begin to cultivate that relationship with your body. There are some people that they'll put their hand
Amazing.
on their heart and they literally cannot feel their heartbeat because they don't have interoceptive awareness. So it is a process. It is a tuning. And some of us, especially in Western societies, have really disconnected from the body. We've overemphasized mental processes in the mind. So just know that, like, wherever you are and wherever you're meeting your body today is just perfect. And it's the only body you've
Yeah.
got. And your body's holding so many messages and so much wisdom for you. So, number one, like tuning to your body. And as you tune to your body, you'll notice, number two, like what emotions are there, what emotional states
Mhm.
are present, what's been there that you haven't been ready
Yeah.
to look at that maybe you're ready to look at. And, finally get support to alchemize some of those things and process
Mhm.
some of those things because you don't have to do it alone. That's
Yeah.
you
Right.
can, but you don't have to. You can absolutely get support and have space held for you. And number three, like, really, if you're wanting to become magnetic, like, figure out what that means for you, right? This is we're saying,
Yeah.
I'm a magnetic coach. This is identity level work. So what does that mean for you? For some people, being a magnetic coach, they're like, oh, I want to have a really fancy car and really fancy bags. For other people, they're like, I want to, like, being a magnetic coach for me means like sitting in the jungle of Peru with ayahuasca
Mhm.
and like studying with indigenous tribes and,
Yeah.
dedicating myself to a life of service. And for other people, they're like, I am just like a regular person and I, like, I'm just the girl next door kind of thing. Like, so you have to figure out, like, what does that look like
What
for
does that
you,
mean for
you
you?
know?
Yeah.
And once you get clear on what that version of you actually looks like, you're going to have so much more alignment. Because when we're saying, putting on our vision boards, I had a client once who was like, putting coach bags in 5-star hotels. And she's like, no,
Mhm.
I want to, like, go back to my, like, home country and build schools and, really, create community there. And I don't give a shit about a Coach bag. And, like, that doesn't matter to me. And she's like, I already, my previous corporate career, she's like, I already was in 5-star hotels. I've done that. Like, I've done that. I don't need
Yeah.
that whole vision board. That actually doesn't excite me. But she's like, that's what I thought it, like, I needed to want in order to have this, like, life manifest. And
Yeah.
being able to, like, reclaim and rewrite that for herself was really empowering. So yeah, really leaning into the identity of, like, what that looks like for you and then taking those steps to embody it.
Amazing. And also, I think it keeps changing.
Mhm.
Like, once you reached a certain level, magnetism, the meaning of magnetism for you changes. And then you're seeing, like you said, in case of this client, that the meaning changes and then you want something else. So
Right.
it's not, yeah, that's what I take from this. Okay, let's talk about your certification now. What's it about? Like, who can join it, and anything that you want to share about it?
Yeah. So the certification, we certify in 7 different modalities, different energetic, subconscious, and somatic practices. And it is a 7-month experience where we are meeting weekly. We also have 3-day immersives throughout where we're really doing deep dives. And, we're looking at various modalities like neuro linguistic programming. I have my own kind of section that I teach that's from my own channel, the psyche coaching section, where it's really like energetics and really learning how to hold space and show up for people. We talk about group coaching and group facilitation because I know a lot of people in the online space, they're like,
Yeah.
one-on-one's cool, but I want to run courses and programs and like, how do I coach someone inside a Facebook group? So,
Yeah.
having those skills and tools is really, really important. Yeah, and we go through all the different like hypnotic language pieces. There's a lot of really amazing things that we can do to really support people to make their transformation even easier. So
Yeah.
we go through all of that.
And
And
like, uh-huh.
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Where were you?
Uh, I was saying, sorry, go ahead. You were saying something and I interrupted.
No, it's okay. That felt complete.
Mhm. Yeah. So like anybody can join, or like there's a certain way, like is do you have a screening, or
Mhm.
just anybody can join?
Yeah, so we keep the group really very intimate, and I
Hmm.
screen every person who comes in. I don't call it a screening, just call it like an interview, like just hop on the call, like very no pressure. It's really just like, do we fit? Do we like each other? Does this align?
Yeah.
Does this feel right? Does this sound right? Does this look like what you've been looking for? And really looking at like what the person has already experienced in their life or in their business, right?
Yeah.
We have some people come in who are completely brand new to the online business world. They've never run a business before. They've never coached a client before. They're totally welcome. We literally start with all of the necessary foundations,
Cute.
and then there's some people who have, coached some friends, but they've never officially gotten paid for anything, or some people who have maybe worked with a couple of clients, but it hasn't been consistent. People
Mhm.
who are working very regularly with clients. We have some people who are plant medicine facilitators, people who are dance
Yeah.
instructors, accountants, like my list, who else? Health coaches, business coaches, like literally so many different human
Uh,
design coach, so many different niches, which I personally really, really love because it,
mhm.
especially in a learning environment, it gives each person an understanding of like, oh, I'm a money coach. I help
Yeah.
people with budgeting, but oh, those are the like you're helping people with
Mhm.
health and fitness. I see the overlap.
Mhm.
I see the mirror of like those same types of beliefs, those same types of patterns. So it's really interesting when we start getting into like individual kind of
Yeah.
niches and seeing how that pops up and how those beliefs and patterns and resistance areas pop up for different clients. Um, yeah, so we work with a lot of different people, and then some people who have like $1 million businesses, right? Who are like
Mhm.
running teams and have more than one business, and are doing all these other things, and they're like, but my passion is coaching, or they have a
Yeah.
business strategy or strategy component, teaching
Mhm.
component to their business, but they're like, I want to get people better results
Yeah.
faster. I want the results to last for them. I
Yeah.
want them to be embodied in their results. So we literally from brand newbies to people who are running businesses, who are already coaching, so
Mhm.
it's a wide range of people.
You're literally making people magnetic.
And then they walk away and they're like, oh, now I feel like even more confident to run a coaching call, or now I know how to run a coaching call, or oh, I know how to help people shift an identity or shift a belief. So it's really beautiful to see all of those things happen. And in the certification through the 7 months, we're learning different techniques, different concepts, different modalities, and then anything we learn, the students are getting to experience as both the coach and the client. So they go into breakout rooms and they do peer coaching, give feedback,
Right.
and I have a co-facilitator, Dr. Nicole Woodard, who's literally amazing. I love her so much, and she's so brilliant and brings so much to the certification around like breath work and the nervous system and really amazing things as well. So yeah, we have a really cool group.
Amazing. You also speak of virtual immersion. Is it like in person or virtual? Sorry, you speak
So
of immersion. I just
yeah,
added virtual.
up to this point, we've done it completely virtually. So the immersive, like 3 days, it'll be like, you're um, on Zoom for a couple of hours each day for 3 days in a row. And we're doing like a deep dive and people will be like, oh my God, my brain, like, like I'm like mashed potatoes, but you don't realize how much you're actually taking in. And then after like, oh my God, that like those 3 days went by so fast. And we may in the future do some in-person work. It's just more that a lot of people who are doing coaching right now are doing it virtually. So it kind of makes sense to learn how to do things over Zoom. But we may this year incorporate some kind of like retreat or something so that people can meet up in person because it would be
Yeah,
really fun
I'm
to.
into retreats. That's why I was like, okay, what does this immersion look like? Is it
Yeah.
virtual or in person?
Yeah, we were maybe going to change it, and then I was like, let's just do one more round, like the way we've got a good system in
Yeah.
place. So yeah, we'll add it. little retreat opportunity.
Awesome. It was so great to have you here. Thank you for joining me
Yeah.
and really giving your time. It's a special episode. And also, like everything that you shared. And I know that just this episode, just listening to what you shared today, is going to like make people so much more magnetic.
Oh, thank
just
you.
applying, just applying what you shared today. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I so appreciate you reaching out and asking and having me. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Really appreciate it.